Daphne, listen to me, Sabrina shouted, but the egg was already cooking. The balloon was already floating upward. Sabrina, why do you look like a booger? The little girl asked as the seesaw fell. The alarm sounded, and, just as it had done as to Sabrina, the catapult fired Daphne into the air and sent her flailing into the vat of goo. When she landed, she struggled to stand up and wipe the slime from her face. "What is this?" she asked. "Glue and buttermilk," Puck shouted. "And bread and butter pickles," Sabrina added, picking a squishy slice of pickle from behind her ear and tossing it to the ground. Daphne's face curled up in confusion as if she couldn't get her brain around the idea. Then a huge smile came to her face. "I want to do it again," she laughed. Granny Rhoda helped Daphne out of the sticky soup. "Look at us," Sabrina said. "We can't go to school today." Suddenly her anger and Puck faded. "We can't go to school today. I can do more research," she thought. "Oh, Lieblings, you've already been out for 3 weeks. I don't want you to get too far behind," Granny said, eyeing the girls and fighting a smile that eventually won the battle. "We'll just go tomorrow, then," Sabrina suggested. Before Granny Rhoda could respond, Mr. Canis appeared at the door, fully dressed in his oversized suit. He looked exhausted and feverish, even more frail than before his transformation, which was startling. He looked like he could use another 3 weeks in bed. "The children have a guest," he said, leaning unsteadily against the door frame. "Thank you, Mr. Canis," Granny Rhoda said, sounding quite motherly. "You go and get your rest." The old man nodded and shuffled back toward his room. "Who's here to see you?" Puck said enviously. Sabrina shrugged and turned to follow Granny Rhoda downstairs, with Daphne and Puck following eagerly. As the family entered the living room, they spotted a skinny old woman in a drab business suit standing by a bookshelf. She picked up a book with her bony hand and scrutinized the title. Sabrina knew the book. It was called "Mermaids Are People Too." The skinny woman tossed it aside and turned to face them, and before Sabrina saw the woman's face, she knew who it was. "Good morning, girls," Miss Smart said. "Did you miss me?" Chapter 3. Minerva Smart hadn't changed since the last time the girls had seen her. The caseworker was still ugly and tired-looking. Her bones still poked out of her clothes as if they were trying to escape her body, and she still had the same angry scowl on her face that she had when she left them on the train platform 3 weeks before. She gazed over her long hooked nose and studied the family scornfully. Puck cringed when her eyes swept over him. My, she said disapprovingly. "Miss Mutt, what a pleasant surprise," Granny Rhoda said without much conviction. "It's so nice to see you again." "Girls, get your things," Miss Mutt said, staring into the old woman's eyes. "You're going back to the orphanage." Daphne slipped her hand into her sister's and squeezed so hard it hurt. "What heavens for?" Granny Rhoda exclaimed. "Because, Mrs. Grimm, you've been completely negligent," the caseworker barked. "What does negligent mean?" Daphne asked. "It means she's a failure," Miss Smart said, interrupting Sabrina, who usually answered Daphne's vocabulary questions. "It means she's refused to do what the state requires of her. It means she's unfit." "You two haven't had a day of school since you arrived," the caseworker continued. "I sent your grandmother a letter reminding her about the law, but I never heard back. So I sent another, and then another, and then another. But still I heard nothing. So because your granny can't find the time to put pen to paper and assure me that you two will be educated, I had to get on a 5 a.m. train and sit next to a man who sniffed his own armpits over and over again for 2 hours. Imagine how thrilled I am to find out that not only have you two not been in school for a month, you obviously haven't seen a bathtub or a bar of soap either." "Who is this woman?" Puck asked. "Her name's Minerva Smart. She was our caseworker from the orphanage." Sabrina answered. Cranky old buzzard, isn't she? The boy replied. Sabrina smiled. Puck sure has its moments, she thought. And who are you supposed to be? Miss Mutt asked, turning her angry face toward the boy. The king of snot-nosed delinquents? Puck smiled. Finally, someone who has heard of me. This is my nephew, visiting from Akron, Ohio, Granny said as she snatched Puck's crown off his head. Miss Mutt, I assure you the girls were going to go to school today. We've gotten a little sidetracked with visiting and such. The truth was that Sabrina and Daphne had made every excuse to avoid school. After the family had followed a plot by Jack of the Beanstalk story to release giants into the world so he could kill them and regain his fame, the girls convinced their grandmother they needed some time to recover. Then Sabrina had come down with a mysterious stomach flu that Daphne conveniently got the next week. A series of stubbed toes, allergic reactions, dizzy spells, bronchial attacks, and food poisonings had continued to keep them out of the classroom, giving them time to do what they both thought was more important, research. Granny's immense and less organized library of books on all things magical probably had held the key to finding and rescuing the girls' parents, missing now for almost 2 years. The sisters Grimm were in agreement for once. School could wait until Henry and Veronica Grimm were home. You understand, Miss Mutt, Granny Rhoda continued. After all, I haven't seen Sabrina since she was a week old. And now you aren't going to see her until she's 18, the caseworker said. She grabbed the sisters roughly and pulled them toward the door. Girls, we've got a train to catch. We'll send for your things. Just then, Elvis trotted into the room. He spotted Miss Mutt, and his usually happy face instantly turned ferocious. He charged the caseworker, sending her tumbling backward over a pile of books, then stood over her, baring his teeth and growling. Get this thing away from me, or we'll be making a stop at the pound too, Miss Mutt shouted, waving at a book at the dog in a furious attempt to intimidate him. Granny Rhoda stepped forward to help the woman, but Sabrina and Daphne stopped her. Instead, the girls stood on either side of the dog and looked down at the caseworker. Call him off, Miss Mutt demanded. Not until you understand what's going to happen today, Sabrina said. My sister and I are going to go upstairs and get cleaned up. We're going to get dressed, and then you're going to take us to school. Then you're going back to New York City alone. You don't get to make the rules, young lady, Miss Mutt snapped. Then we'll just let you and Albert walk out your problems on your own, Daphne said, patting the big dog on his head. I guess you could probably make a run for it, but you won't get far. Elvis can smell evil. Elvis barked viciously. Miss Mutt stared at the girls for a long moment and then furrowed her brow. Go get ready for school, she snarled. Despite her delayed tactics, Sabrina was actually looking forward to her first day of the 6th grade. School offered her something that Granny Rhoda's house didn't. Normal people. She would be surrounded by dual teachers and glassy-eyed kids, watching the clock tick slowly, and she would be as happy as a pig in mud. When you lived with a flying boy and the big bad wolf, a little boredom was welcome. Sabrina had even planned how her first day would go. She would melt into the crowd and do her best not to draw any attention to herself. She wouldn't join any clubs or raise her hand, but would drift through the day like an invisible girl. She would force some kids to be fun, and they would sit together at lunchtime and maybe pass notes in class, just like normal kids. It was going to be one long, dual, happy experience. Unfortunately, Smart was ruining Sabrina's plan. It's hard to be just another face in the crowd when you're being dragged down the hallway by your ear. Not that it was entirely Miss Smart's fault that Sabrina was getting attention. Even after 3 vigorous washings, the girl's hair was still full of goo from Puck's booby trap, and stuck out in 1,000 different directions like a hungry octopus. Daphne, on the other hand, had sculpted her hair into an old-fashioned beehive style had spiraled high on her head. Inside the sticky tower, the little girl had inserted several pencils and pens, a ruler, a protractor, 2 gummy razors, and a package of peanut butter crackers for later. By the time the girls got to the principal's office, Sabrina was sure every kid in the school thought that the Ferryport Landing Elementary was now enrolling escaped mental patients. "Excuse me, I'm Minerva Smart from the New York City Department of Child Welfare," Miss Smart said, pounding impatiently on a bell that sat on the counter of the school office. 2 middle-aged secretaries were busy spraying bug spray at something in the far corner of the room. The one with the thick glasses leaned down and smacked whatever it was with a magazine, while the chubby one stomped on it like an Irish folk dancer. "I think it's dead," the chubby one said as she bent over to get a better look. Smart rang the bell again, and the 2 women looked at her as if she had just come in with a flamethrower. "I'm in a hurry," the caseworker said. "I need to enroll these 2 orphans." "We are not orphans," Sabrina and Daphne said. Miss Smart pinched them on the shoulder for arguing with her. The bespectacled secretary crossed the room and snatched the bell away. Once she had tossed it into a drawer, she looked at the caseworker and frowned. "I'll see if our guidance counselor, Mr. Sheepshank, is available," she said, as she eyed the children in bewilderment. Shaking her head, she stepped over to a door and knocked on it lightly. "Sir, we have some new students, I think," the secretary said, turning back and eyeing the girls' odd hairdos. Yes, please bring them in," a happy voice called. The secretary ushered the trio into the office and closed the door. Mr. Sheepshank was a little man dressed in a green suit and a bow tie with smiley faces on it. He had a round, full, friendly face with freckled cheeks as red as his hair. When he smiled, little wrinkle lines formed in the corners of his glittering eyes. "Good morning, ladies. I'm Caspar Sheepshank, your school counselor," the man said cheerily. "Welcome to Ferryport Landing Elementary." Mr. Sheepshank took Miss Smart's hand in his and shook it vigorously. The caseworker blushed, and she did something Sabrina had never seen before. She smiled. "I am Minerva Smart from the New York City Department of Child Welfare," she said. "It's a pleasure to meet you," the guidance counselor replied. "And who are these lovely ladies?" "Introduce yourselves, girls," Miss Smart said, giggling. "I'm Sabrina Grimm," Sabrina said. Sheepshank seized her hand and gave her the same joint-jarring treatment she had given to Miss Smart. "I'm Daphne Grimm," Daphne chirped. "Grimm? You wouldn't happen to be related to Henry Grimm?" the counselor asked. "He's our dad," Sabrina said. "He went to school here with us too," Mr. Sheepshank said. "I remember him quite clearly. He was always getting into trouble. I assume I can expect more of the same from the 2 of you." Unsure of how to respond, the girl said nothing. After a long, uncomfortable pause, Sheepshank chuckled and winked at Sabrina. "Just a joke, ladies. Your father was a model student. The girls were in my custody for a year and a half until we placed them here in Ferryport Landing with their grandmother, Rhoda," Miss Smart explained. "Unfortunately, Mrs. Grimm has not taken their education seriously, and they've been out of school for a month." "Better late than never," the counselor laughed as he pulled some paperwork out of a desk drawer and began to write. "Caspar," Miss Smart said, unbuttoning the top button of her shirt, "I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I didn't warn you about these 2. They are quite a handful. I tried to place them in good homes more than a dozen times, and each time it ended in chaos and grief.